I need a fixture table. That'll do. Welcome back to Random Rod Shop, folks. Well, if you've been hanging with me, you know we've been working on the lower control arms for that 67 pickup. And I decided after going through that, we need a jig table. So today, I'm going to show you what I think is a pretty good mod for the HarborFreight welding table. Let's get after it. So HarborFreight had their 24 by 36 welding table, and there's lots of videos out there of people making tool carts out of them, making welding tables. I've got a pretty solid welding table, something I could beat on. I got the vise on the end of it. What I wanted was a jig table, and I think HarborFreight I think it will serve that purpose. So what I did, I bought two of them and sandwiched them together. Now, what that does is, if you think about it, that sort of makes an I-beam construction out of this thing, and it's pretty solid. I didn't really want something, I didn't need another table. I don't have enough, I'm fighting for room anyway. So I wanted something that I could throw up on this table, do whatever jigging and welding I needed to do, and then take this thing off like a suitcase and stand it up and slide it somewhere out of the way until I need it again. So that's why it's set up like it is. Let me go through what I did to get to this point. So the first thing, guys, it's got one of these. The top screws into the frame with these little bolts. Well, when you stack two of them together, those aren't big enough. Went to town, couldn't find any bolts, so ended up having to make some bolts. I can tell you, buying bolts would have been a whole lot faster. I'm gonna throw in a little clip of what I did to make these bolts right here. All right, way more time in them bolts than I really wanted. But they're done. They all set flush. You may be asking, well, there's no screwdriver slot. In the end, that's no big deal. I don't plan on taking this thing apart. And so I made the bolts extra long, and so what it means is I can put a pair of channel locks on that. And it doesn't take much, just to kind of hold it until you can tighten the nuts up. And I don't have this thing bolted together. I didn't use a half-inch breaker bar to bolt this thing together. It's just everything is snug. The idea being, I just need this tabletop to be relatively flat. Which leads to the next issue. Apparently, apparently this frame was bowed just a little bit. I don't know if you can see it up underneath there, but on this side, I had to do some shimming. The rest of the table seemed to be pretty close, but this side, yeah, this side wasn't happy. So I can't remember. I got 4 or 5 thicknesses of a Mountain Dew can in there, and I think I've got 3 there, and this side was the same way. So I had to shim up this side of the table. Let me get the level and put it on there. All right, so back there, that's showing about level. In the middle, it's showing level there too. All right, so that's good news. Well, I got it pointed down that way 2/10. And that one's showing pretty level. Well, no, it's down. That's down 1. So I got the front a couple of tenths high. But it seems to be relatively symmetric, right? It's just tilted front. It's tilted down in the front just a little bit. I think we'll be all right with that. Let's have a look at the gap. I'm gonna get the camera down, see if I can get it in plane so you can see it too. A little bit right there. And there. So relatively speaking, we got a little bit here and a little bit here, which is kind of what you would expect, right? The brace is here and the brace is out there, so there's just a little bit of a belly here. We got kind of the same picture there. It's really hard to, I don't know if you can see that. So again, there's a little bit of a belly here and here. Let's look out at the problem child. So it's got a, you can see some light in about the same place. I can tell you, I don't know if you can tell it on camera, but these are just a little bit bigger than the that side in the middle. Given I had to shim these up, probably gonna come back in here and put shims in between these to get that up. Now that I'm looking at it close, it looks like I could bring this middle up just a little bit more. So I'll add some shims to the middle and probably add some shims to both sides. Those of you that are watching along, we've been working on trying to build that front lower control arm for that 67 pickup, so we can put the 2000 Silverado spindles and brakes on that 67. So relative to the jig we had doing that, I think this is a machine surface. So I'll tinker with this a little bit and get it a little better. I'm not sure it's necessary, but once you see it, you can't unsee it. So we'll raise this up. Now that the table is together, let me show you what I did to the clamps. Those of you who have one of these, the way it works, you basically set the clamp down in there and you put this nut on and then you clamp your stuff down. I wanted something just a touch more convenient. Plus, now that I got 2 decks on here, that's not really viable. But even if I had one, even if I only had 1 layer, I'd still look for something that didn't require me to put a nut on the bottom. So what I did was, I got some 5/8 rebar. It was part of an old cattle gate. Cut it in 4-inch sections, drilled a hole in one end and tapped it so that it would screw onto this. Problem I had, because at the time I thought that was a cat's meow. You slide that in there, when you start tightening the clamp up, this thing just slides out. So what I come up with was I cut some grooves on it. And basically that gives just a little bit of you know, a little bit of cocking, if you will, and it allows it to grab. And I think that's going to work. So now all I have to do is, you know, put the stops that came with it. And by the way, they have a groove in there too to keep them from coming out. More choice of example stock. But that's all in there. And that's a lot better in my mind than having to reach under and put a nut on. So you can definitely, you know, the aluminum's the weak point here, so you can't just crank these things down anyway. But I'm pretty happy with that. Now, when it was all said and done, I'm not so sure some 5/8 all thread wouldn't work here, you know, coarse thread. So if you know, if you don't have a lathe, I think that might be doable. Because then, at worst case, you just have to take the grinder and knock off the threads, you know, to form that gap. But that works pretty slick. I'm happy about that. So the other advantage of buying two tables you get 8 clamps. And you get lots of stops. So you can end up with 8 stops. And these are so you can put your work off of the table. And if they need to be bolted down, you can get up underneath here and run a longer bolt up through the bottom to hold them down. Don't know that they need to be held down if, you know, if you're going to clamp everything. Let me get a piece of pipe here. All right, so just got a piece of whatever that is, 2-inch tubing. So I'm not sure you need to screw those down. But if you do, you can put a bolt up through the bottom. Well, I think this makes a pretty good jig table. We're going to find out because I'm going to rejig that lower control arm and see if I can make a repeatable process. All right, let me summarize this whole thing. I wanted a fixture table. I didn't need a welding table that I could beat on or drag around. I just needed something that I could lay out on that was reasonably accurate, and because just the way I work, it needs to be relatively robust. So I decided to put 2 of the HarborFreight welding tables together. Kind of a I-beam layout, right, in terms of how rigid it is. And you guys saw, I've still got some more shimming on this front to get it exactly right. relative to, you know, what we do around here, this thing's probably good enough. I'll probably monkey with it a little bit, but the truth of it is it's probably close enough. So I wanted a fixture table, I wanted it portable, and that kind of led me, and I wanted it, you know, inexpensive. So that led me to the HarborFreight. Probably doesn't hurt that they had it on sale for $149. So that was probably part of the motivation. But I didn't like the clamps. And yeah, I think everybody sells this table in some way, shape, or form. So I spent some time modifying the hold downs. So I didn't have to put the nut on the bottom side, and you can put these anywhere you want. You can move them pretty readily without a whole lot of heartburn. Those will hold much more than the aluminum brace on this, I'm pretty sure. The one thing I did find is these holes that bolt down the table, they're not the same on both tables. I upsized, these bolts are 3/8, so it's a little bigger than what came in this. It came with a little bigger than what HarborFreight put in these, or whoever makes it. So when I was drilling them out to 3/8, which you don't have to drill it out much, but I noticed that that bottom plate, the holes, I mean, there were a couple of them. Those things may have been a 1/16 off. So the center line of the holes weren't the same. In the end, it didn't matter. I was just drilling through it, and you know, I kept drilling it until the bolts went up and down, and they were happy. But just if you do this, I would have to say it's a high likelihood those holes aren't going to line up for you either. So I'm happy about this thing. I hope you found this useful. If you're subscribed, I appreciate it. If you're not subscribed, go ahead and, you know, subscribe. Leave a like and make a comment. And until next time, I'm Random at Random Rod Shop, and I'm out of here.